Hello, this is I Go Travel with Don Barnett. I was driving down the highway number 1 in California along the coast, and I went by this sign and it said, see the Hearst Castle. I said, what's a castle doing in the USA? Sounds like a tourist trap to me, so I kept on driving. But I thought about it a bit, and you know, you never know. I made a U-turn and I went back. And did I find a castle? And did I find a story? Come on, I'll show you the castle and tell you the story. The Hearst Castle at the little bay at San Simeon along the Pacific coast of California is located in yellow here, about halfway between San Francisco to the north and Los Angeles to the south. This video is about the king of American journalism, America's first and maybe most influential media mogul, a guy by the name of William Randolph Hearst. Up somewhere in these hills, he built a sprawling mansion. They call it a castle today. The exciting, rich glory days are gone forever. But now we can tour the castle and learn about the character that built the mansion. As we look at the shoreline at San Simeon, I can tell you that Hearst also got America into a war with Spain, controlled almost every influential newspaper in the United States, got the Hollywood movie industry into full flight, and in the end donated his own wildlife that became the forerunner of the internationally famous San Diego Zoo. What a story he has. This is the Pacific shoreline just below the Hearst Castle at San Simeon. Here you can see an elephant seal rookery, where these sea animals, the size and weight of a small truck or van, breed and rear their young, then will swim up to 5,000 kilometers offshore, diving deep into the ocean as they travel. These big boys and girls love to loaf in the sun, as you can see. They get their name because their noses, particularly the males, their noses resemble that of an elephant's trunk, hence the name elephant seals. Hunted to near extinction for their blubber-soaked oil, they were saved by the invention of kerosene for heating in the mid-19th century. Today their numbers are over 200,000. In this video, let's look at a few things about the Hearst Castle. We'll look at the castle itself and some of the great scenes and pictures around that castle. And the castle, of course, includes the pools, the gardens. We don't have many pictures of the ranch. This is about the only one. This particular building was built for one of the ranch head foremen, and he lived in it for a number of years. And there is also a winery associated with the Hearst complex today. But again, as a tourist, we did not get in to look at that. So let's go and start to look at the castle. Before we get starting to look at some of the pictures of the castle itself, it's not a castle like the old European castles with a moat and big protective military walls around it. It's more like a huge, sprawling mansion. And the Hearst family used to camp out there in tents. And he finally contacted an architect. And he said to the architect, and his quote is kind of well known. He says, you know, we're getting a little bit tired of camping. And we would like to build, in blue here, a little something. Well, a little something turned out to be the main castle has, look here, 38 bedrooms, 40 bathrooms, a theater, 2 first-class heated swimming pools, tennis courts, a billiard or pool room. On the right-hand side, 19 sitting rooms, 41 fireplaces, a beauty salon, and 3 guest houses that were huge in themselves because they increased the number of bedrooms to about 40 up into the 60 range for both the bedrooms and the bathrooms in total. We are ready. Let's get our tickets at the main entrance and get on the bus and ride several kilometers up into the hills to the castle. The road is good, paved, but only the tour buses are allowed on it. William Randolph Hearst, on the left, hired California's first certified female architect. She was Julia Morgan, who is on the right in this photo, and she designed and worked on the castle for nearly 30 years. Hearst hired the best, male or female. He also hired America's first World War I war correspondent, who was a female. And he also hired the first female newspaper editor of a Washington, D.C. newspaper. Architect Julia Morgan was one of 4 women influential in Hearst's life. The others were his mother, his wife, and his lover. Hearst was an interesting and somewhat colorful character in his own way. And I will tell you more about Hearst as we look at parts of his extravagant home. This was near the entrance of our tour. William Randolph Hearst eventually attended Harvard when he got older, and he attended for a couple of years and became famous for his wild and extravagant student parties. He painted pictures of profs in the bottoms of chamber pots so students could urinate on their least favorite prof, and he was eventually booted out of Harvard. After his father's death, his mother, Phoebe, sold the famous and rich Nevada Anaconda mine for $7.5 million, gave the money to her son, who bought a newspaper, and America's first and perhaps greatest media mogul was born. This is one of the many stairways and beautiful flowers everywhere as we toured the castle. Hearst's competition with Joseph Pulitzer of New York, who today is the name behind the famous Pulitzer Award for Achievement in Literature and Journalism, went on for a number of years. Both Hearst and Pulitzer resorted to a thing called yellow journalism in their competition for national newspaper and media supremacy. Yellow journalism was a way of reporting the news, and it was a way that both Hearst and Pulitzer used to the extreme in efforts to sell more of their newspapers. Yellow journalism emphasized the sensational over facts. Hearst told his newspaper reporters, "Make the news, don't report it. That's your job." Sexual violence was a very attractive area to exaggerate and bring to the attention of the public to get them to buy the newspapers. And when the Spanish-American War of 1898 broke out, Hearst had a hand in contributing to that war, and he sent one of his newspaper reporters down to Cuba and with the following instructions: "You furnish the pictures, I'll furnish the war." And Hearst, in effect, did furnish the war and pressured the U.S. into declaring war on Spain. And the result was the Spanish-American War of 1898. Hearst wanted the U.S. to pounce on Spain and take control of both Cuba and the Philippines. He was enthused about a war against Spain, who was in decline from its one-time powerful empire. Hearst chartered a dozen ships to sail southward and watch the activity, taking along a movie camera, which was the first live video of a war, accompanied by two showgirls and dressed up in a yachting suit, clothing that was, he had a red tie that matched his red hatband. And he watched with his friends from a safe distance the firing of the first shells in the Spanish-American War. Such was life in the fast lane. The grounds in the castle were beautiful and relaxing to walk through. The flash point in the 4-month Spanish-American War was the American battleship USS Maine that exploded and sank in the Havana harbor. Hearst newspapers blamed the ship sinking on the Spaniards, even though there was evidence that an accidental internal explosion may have sank the ship. One man, William Randolph Hearst, controlled so much of the public media that he was able to maneuver his country into going to war. These twin towers are a showcase part of the castle. There are 18 bells in each tower, and these bells are played by a keyboard on the first floor. Here are some more scenes and statues of the beautiful grounds. Hearst's wife, Millicent, and their children lived in New York, while he lived here at the castle with his mistress. His mistress was a showgirl and long-term actress who was Marion Davies, Hollywood's first actress, and he lived with her for 30 years in his California castle. After World War I, art treasures were sold at bargain prices, and wealthy people like Hearst bought them. You can see many of Hearst's world-famous treasures when you tour the castle today. This is another photo of Hearst. He invited only the rich and famous to the castle for the many parties there. In those early days, there was a saying around Hollywood that there were two kinds of movie stars: those who got invited to the castle for Hearst's parties, and those who said they got invited. The rich and famous of the day attended, from Prime Minister Churchill of Britain to actors from Hollywood, Clark Gable, people like John Wayne, Charlie Chaplin, Marilyn Monroe, who else? Gene Simmons, Jane Russell, Cary Grant, and Robert Mitchum, and many others of the Hollywood crowd of that era. This assembly room was so large that telephones were installed on each end because the distance was too far to walk to the other end during the socializing time. People gathered in this great room, had drinks and socialized, waiting for Hearst to arrive. Rather than make a grand entrance, Hearst liked to step through the door indicated by the green arrow on the left here. He walked down a hidden passageway, opened the door, and surprised everyone by suddenly being right in their midst. It was his style of entrance. Hearst himself was not a drinker and frowned on those who frequently overindulged. However, his mistress, actress Marion Davies, contrary to Hearst's wishes and policies, was both a drinker and a socializer. When pressured by the Hearst family in later years to leave, her response was, "Why should I run after the streetcar when I'm already on board?" We are looking at the billiard room with a couple of pool tables in it, and here's 2 or 3 well-groomed tennis courts, and this is the theater room. And the theater room, after the supper meal, everyone was expected to watch a film or two in the theater room. Hearst was the pioneer of the Hollywood movie era, supporting silent movies even before the invention of moving pictures and sound. And he was a master in news reporting through the new medium of moving picture shows. Hearst supported and made his mistress, Marion Davies, one of the first big stars of Hollywood. Amongst his other achievements, he was also the granddaddy of Hollywood. His health failed in later years, and they had to move from San Simeon to San Francisco. His last glimpse of his beloved San Simeon was the long trestle here, then filled with the flowers and long-growing vines that ran from the castle down toward the coast. On that last trip, Marion Davies said that the old man wept. She said they would come back sometime. They never did. Marion Davies was an actress, a well-known, famous actress and talented actress in her own right. She was famous before the audio came into movies. They called them the silent movies, and she was quite a star, a great comedian. And she made the transition from silent movies over to what they called the talkies. And she did this with a great effort because when she got excited, she tended to stutter. And she worked very hard with Hearst's support to overcome this stuttering problem. Hearst and Marion Davies had a daughter, and her name was Patricia Lake. She, as a little girl, their daughter was presented to everyone as Marion Davies' niece, but by their own admission, the two parents admitted that this girl was indeed their daughter. She was in all of their home movies. They took her on trips with her, and they financed their daughter all through her life. And Marion Davies, when she passed away, she willed her entire estate to her daughter. The night that William Randolph Hearst died, Marion Davies was mysteriously drugged. And when she woke up in the morning, Hearst's body and all of his clothes, all of his belongings, photographs, wallet, all that stuff, it was gone. The Hearst family and Marion Davies wanted nothing to do with one another. Marion Davies eventually sold her share. Hearst donated much of his estate to Marion Davies, who in turn sold her share to Mrs. Hearst for $1. Marion Davies did not attend the funeral of William Randolph Hearst because she felt that the Hearst family would not welcome her there. The name Marion Davies was removed from any reference whatsoever on any of the Hearst Corporation assets. Marion Davies, in later life, was a shrewd business woman. She owned the Palm Springs in Palm Springs. She owned the Desert Springs Hotel and many other pieces of real estate. And she was very active in providing funds for charities. Before we leave the castle, I want to show you the pool area. There's two big outdoor pools, and they are beauties, as you can see. They was rich. They had a good time here. And there was also an indoor pool, and this is a picture of the indoor pool. This is a photograph of Hearst on his saddle horse, and he liked to ride, and he took his guests for many rides over the hillsides. There was only one rule: no one, but no one, ever rode ahead of William Randolph Hearst on the trail ride. The Hearst newspaper media empire spread across the U.S. He was connected to all of it by telephone wires from his castle, often making long-distance phone calls to his editors all through the night and early morning. He also traveled in this two-prop plane, state-of-the-art in the Hearst era. These are the old animal dens at the ranch. Hearst collected animals from all around the world. When his health failed and the economic pinch was felt, most of the animals had to be transferred to San Diego, where they started the San Diego Zoo. But there are a few, like these zebras, that are still at the ranch. And here are some descendants of others at the zoo, some photos that I took when I was at the zoo. And their ancestors were originally brought by Hearst to his ranch. There are many aspects to the legacy of William Randolph Hearst. If you're ever down this way, stop in at the Hearst Castle. You'll never regret it. And also go a little further south into San Diego and see the zoo. It's a first-class operation. If you enjoyed what you saw, hit the subscribe button and we'll be able to bring you more of these travel videos. In the meantime, this is I Go Travel with Don Barnett. Adios for now.